Thank you everybody for joining us today. This is a webinar for Saville Public Entity on how to write your local city or county government's insurance. My name is Carson Saville and I'm the Vice President here at Saville Public Entity. I've got Bob Saville on here as well. He's going to give you a brief history of the public sector, how it got started and how we got involved in it. So Bob, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Carson. Well, I'm glad everyone has joined us today and hope you're having a good day. We started Saville Public Entity back 40 years ago with just one or two accounts, and this was during the period in the 1980s when it was a very tight insurance market. Most of the pools were created in the mid 80s and the latter part of the 80s, right after we began writing the public sector coverage. During that time, most carriers only provided the property, the auto, and the general liability. There was no public official liability, EPL, or law enforcement liability. And about the mid 80s was when those particular lines of coverage began to be added. We've been in this business for 40 years now, and we've grown to 25 states and over 300 accounts. And we've worked with hundreds of brokers throughout that time. It's been a successful run. We have over 8 different carriers, there's about 8 carriers that are in the public sector. I want to point out that we'll try to address 3 different points so that you have these takeaways from this seminar. First, your target accounts in the public sector. What will those be and what do they look like? Second thing we'll address is what's required to quote these accounts, the applications, the schedules, those types of things, and how do we put those together? And then the third thing will be what makes you a successful writer in the public sector. So Carson, if you'll take over from here and just give us some information about how the public sector works and how we integrate with that.
Thanks, Bob. So I want to mention everybody real quick, if we're going to throw a lot at you at once, so in a short amount of time. So if anybody needs to post any questions in the chat, feel free to do that. You can always email or call us as well if questions come up later. So I'm going to start off by talking about how we work with insurance agents. And so as Bob mentioned, we're a wholesale broker. We work with a local insurance agent to help them write and maintain their city and county government. We write around 300 cities and counties across the country, and every one of those has that unique local insurance agent. So typically, that agent only writes 1 to 2 public sector accounts. There's really no reason for them to be a huge expert in the public sector or even have public sector markets. So we're able to come in as that expert, work alongside the agent, and almost take a behind the scenes approach and handle the submission process, approach all of our markets that we have, and advise that agent on the best way to write the business. With writing so many accounts, we see all kinds of exposures across the country, and we might see something that's popping up in Kansas that we can identify and alert agents in other states before their renewal comes up and prevent a claim from arising or a gap in coverage. Another thing Bob's going to touch on in the next section is we help agents with broker bids, RFPs, market assignments. This can be really overwhelming for an agent that's never gone through this process with a municipality or county, utility, or a school system. So at the end of the day, our goal here is an agent would use us as a resource for market knowledge, access to public sector carriers, handling the submission process, the quoting process, and depending on the account, we'll even join them for a meeting, in person or online virtually. So with that, we're going to talk about next the 2 different types of agents between a non-incumbent agent, somebody who's never written a public sector account before, and going at this cold. And we're going to talk about incumbent agents and guys that are already writing this and why they should use us as well. So Bob, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Carson. Let's start with the non-incumbent. So those of you who do not write a city or a county and are interested in moving into the public sector, it's a different animal. So first thing you have to do, like you do with your commercial book of business, is identify the expiration date and who the primary contacts are. With a city or county, the political relationship is the most important thing. If you have the political relationship, that provides the entree into the account, and it's come down sometimes to how many votes you have as to whether you'll get to quote the coverage or even write the coverage. The contacts we like best would be the city or county manager, the finance director, or the city attorney. Generally, the city council or county commission will look to one of these three folks to give them direction relative to the insurance, because the city council members are not experts. We like the finance directors as a general rule. When you contact that finance director, you want to identify the relationship he has with the incumbent agent, and then determine if they're open to a bid, if they're open to letting you quote outright without a bid, or if they just want to choose a broker. And generally, those are the three types of alternatives a city looks at when they are going to change agents. The first one would be, like any account, if they were going to let you quote the coverage, and they'll let any broker go to the market and get any carrier. Generally, the incumbent will block the markets before you get out to the marketplace, and most markets require the loss runs to secure the market. So if you don't have the loss runs, you're at a little disadvantage. That leads us to the second way to bid the coverage, and that would be to assign markets. And a lot of cities do this. They'll assign markets to each one of the agents, and you have just as good of an opportunity to write the coverage as the incumbent if you get a competitive market. The key to that would be to call us and find out who the competitive markets are and who the incumbent market is, so we can identify who you should select. The third situation would be a broker bid, which you're probably not used to and haven't seen before. But a broker bid is basically a beauty contest among the brokers. Now, if you're the incumbent, that can be an advantage if you don't want other agents to bring in other markets. But if you are, if you're not the incumbent, then you could be assigned that market if you have the votes and the relationship there, and then you would get a broker of record letter on the current carriers. You always have to be aware as a city or a county that there are pools out there, and the pools write about 50% of the business. So if they're already with a pool, Carson will go into how to negotiate with pools and how to beat the pools later in this webinar. The second position you would be in is if you're the incumbent agent. Obviously, if you're the incumbent, you want to keep the business and you want to minimize your work. And if you can avoid a bid, that's the best way to do it. So we can help you do that by taking all of the information you have on your current carrier. We help you write the applications, do the spreadsheets for the schedules, analyze the losses, and then we can send it out to all of our carriers in one fell swoop. So this gives you the ability to come before the insured and say you've marketed the account and here's what the options are. Sometimes you'll find that one of those new carriers has a better program than you have right now, but many times it just stays where it is and there's no change. The second issue you may run into is if you have to bid the coverage. Many cities like to bid every 3 years. If that's the case, then you would like to control that bid. To us, the best way to control a bid is if there's no restrictions. In other words, they're not assigning markets or they're not doing a broker bid. So you can go out to the markets, secure your markets, and make sure that all those markets are secured before the bid setbacks are released. Usually that's a possibility. If that's the case, that's where you would use Saville to go out to all the markets that you don't have access to. And many times our agents have the markets that we go to, and they come through us to get to their actual agency carriers because we have the expertise to make them successful. It doesn't do you any good if the pool comes in and beats you and you are making a higher commission with one of your own markets. So when you get ready to send all this information in as the incumbent agent, you'll already have the applications, the expiring proposal, the schedules, and so forth. And we like to compare it to your tax return. Everybody's doing their tax return right now. And you put that into your proverbial shoebox. In this case, it'll be an email, and you can drag it over, drop it in that email, and send it to us. And then we'll create the applications so that you can send them to the markets. It's a very simple process and shouldn't take a lot of time. And we'll send you back an email with 10 questions or so to finish things out. I'm going to let Carson address pools right now. Pools are unique to the public sector in most cases. And it's important that you know how the pools work because they represent, as I said, 50% of the risk you'll see. Carson?
All right. Thanks, Bob. So we're going to refer to this as pools in this section, but this could be in your state an association, it could be a league, could be a fund or a trust. Every state kind of has different names that they call this, but we're going to refer to all of them as pools here. So what it is a shared risk retention group similar to MediShare, and it's a group of cities, and it's not real insurance like a first dollar carrier would provide, but they buy their own reinsurance and they have members that contribute to the fund through their premium payments. And a lot of them have a common expiration date for their package and workers' comp insurance. And those two can be different. So if you find out that your city is in a pool, you automatically know if the common expiration date is a 1/1 when the account renews. So they also like to make it difficult on local agents by putting requirements in. And I'm going to use Georgia for an example. We have a city pool that's called the Georgia Municipal Association, and all of their workers' comp accounts come up January 1st. Well, we start calling agents pretty early because a 90-day notice is required to quote this account, and that's October 1st. And that has to be mailed out by the city in order for us to quote a January 1 effective date. Similar, the package comes up May 1st for all of these work or package accounts. That's February 1st, 90 days prior to that, letter has to be mailed out. So I'm going to give you an example now of an agent that we contacted, didn't even know that this was a possibility and never heard of public sector insurance. And we reached out to them. And like Bob mentioned, the local relationship that you have with your city or county is the main criteria here. If you don't have that foot in the door relationship or the contacts, you're at a disadvantage from the start. And so we went to that agent and we said, do you have any political relationships around your area? And he said, yeah, I know just about everybody. And from there, we were able to help him write the county, the school, and several different towns and cities in his area that he previously had no idea was even possible. So if you're going after one of these pool accounts, that relationship is key because they've been in this pool for 20 years and don't know any other method of how to buy insurance. They might have not ever been approached by somebody. So I always encourage agents when I'm talking to them each day to get involved in their community. I mean, it can only help your agency, by sponsoring a baseball team or serving on the Chamber of Commerce. Go to the council meetings, find out what's going on. All that's posted on the minutes and the agendas on their website as well. When the time does come for you to quote against, say, a state pool, they're going to recognize that we'd be keeping tax dollars local, putting it with your agency. And that's a huge deal for a lot of cities. Being with that pool, the money just goes to the state. It doesn't stay local and circulate through the area. So with that, that's all on pools. Again, I'm throwing a lot at y'all right now, but post anything you got in the chat and feel free to email us as well. Next, we're going to talk about large public entities. These are your metro cities. In this section, we're going to refer to these as SIR accounts, and that stands for self-insured retention. So these large cities, I'm going to do another example here. Let's say we have city of Atlanta or even a suburb of Atlanta, which is paying $1 million in premium each year. Go over a 10-year period, that's $10 million in premium. Now, if that city was to go self-insured and take, say, a high deductible of $500,000, for example, the city would be responsible for all the claims under that deductible. And they might bring a TPA in to help handle those claims, since they probably don't have anybody at the city that can do that full time. The premium, though, might drop down to $100,000 from $1 million, because the carrier has less risk and they're only paying for cat claims and large ones over $500,000. So now we look at a 10-year period, they've only paid out $1 million in premium versus $10 million. And then we would also include the cost for the TPA and any claims they paid under $500,000. So if you got a city that's got great loss control, good risk management, and they're paying a lot of money in premium, we can easily move them to self-insured and save the city significant amounts of money that goes to their budget. And all of these cities and counties live off of that budget. That is, everything they do revolves around that. So, I mean, this sounds like a lot, but we've moved a lot of cities from first dollar markets and pools to a self-insured program before, depending on loss ratios and, like I said, risk control. So next, we're going to talk about, okay, I wrote my first city or county. Now what? What does it look like after we bind our first one? Am I on my own? How does Saville help me? So I'm going to let Bob tackle this part.
Thank you, Carson. And over the 40 years I've done this, I've converted a lot of accounts to self-insured, and oddly enough, the worse the loss is, sometimes better the candidate, because those losses will follow them for years. And when you self-insured, those losses go away. That happens on workers' compensation because their experience mod goes to a 1. So the bad loss experience goes away, and the same with the casualty. So it could be a good loss experience, it could be bad loss experience, but they're all self-insured candidates. So let's say you do write a self-insured account, or you write a first dollar account. What do you do next? How do you service this account? You don't have any experience in the municipal sector. So you question, well, can we really service this account adequately? And that's where Saville steps in, and we become your municipal department. And we've done this for hundreds of agents. Sometimes we talk directly to the risk at your request, or sometimes we'll just work directly with your agency, and you'll take the information we give you and give it to the city or county. So we're flexible. We can do it either way. There's many questions that come up with the cities, and they'll be complicated. Sometimes they'll be simple, but most of the time you'll contact us and we'll have the solution. So we'll address whatever issues might arise. From a claims standpoint, our claims department only handles public sector claims. All claims are reported to us, and then we have a relationship with the carriers because we talk to them every day. Risk control is an important part in the public sector, and we use the boots on the ground of the carriers to do the in-person risk control, and then we coordinate it with you, the agent, and ourselves to make sure it's tailored precisely to that account. So risk control becomes a big part. So we're going to wrap up right now, and at the beginning I told you that we had 3 points we wanted you to take away. Your target accounts in the public sector. Well, the simple answer there is if it doesn't have ink behind it, it's not incorporated, then it's a target account. So that could be a city, a county, a school, a college, a housing authority, a public school system. There's a lot of different types of entities that fall into that definition. Then the second thing was, what's required to quote them? Well, remember the shoebox. You can drag and drop into an email all the things you already have, copies of deck pages, the proposal, the loss runs from the prior year even, and then we would update those loss runs, or the schedules. If they're in PDFs, that works. If they're in Excel, that works. If they're in Accord. And the beauty about the public sector is we really don't use Accords. So what's required? Mainly custom applications, the schedules, the budget, and how to be successful in writing them. Well, if we do all this work and we're not successful, sort of a waste of time. So our goal is to make you successful. We know the competition, we know the public sector, and we know the carriers. So we take the combination of all three of those, and we help you be the person, the face in front of the city or the county, and be successful in writing or keeping that account. Carson, you want to wrap up?
Yep. Thank you, Bob. So I know we did go over a lot in a short amount of time. I don't see any questions in the chat right now, so we're going to go ahead and shut this down. But I want to make another note that when you do approach a city or a county for the first time, keep in mind that this might be something that they've never been approached with. And we want to make sure that they don't view this as you're doubling my workload. You know, we use even if they're with a pool, we can use the pool's apps and anything that city's sending to their current carrier so that there's no additional work. We don't want to hand them a 40-page app and say, well, here you go, email it to me next week. So let's see, we got one question that's popped up. Your contact information, or how do we best coordinate with you? There you go. So this is Bob's email, my email, the office number, and both of our cell phones. We answer our phones 7 days a week. If you've got an account that you're just wondering about, if it's in one of our 25 states, we've probably seen it before or know something about it. If it's not one of our states, we're looking to go into other states, and we can definitely help you out. So feel free to reach out to us anytime, bounce stuff off of us. But like I said, Bob's been doing this for 40 years. He's probably knows more than anyone in the country about public sector insurance. He wrote some of the first public sector policies back in the 80s. So if there aren't any more questions, we're going to go ahead and close out. Here's one more. How do we compete with a large broker? Yes, video is recorded, Pablo. Dirk says, how do we compete with a large broker like Gallagher? These companies have history and experience. What resources do we need in our office to help manage? Okay, great question. So the relationship, the political local relationship is huge. Gallagher probably doesn't have an office in that city. They probably didn't grow up there. They probably don't know any of the council members as friends. So those are typically, go ahead, Bob.
Let me step in there. What happens in this scenario is Gallagher has all the resources in one location. You're the local agent, and we have the resources at Saville. So when we team up together, we look like a big broker with the unique aspect that you have a local presence and you know all the council members. Typically, you'll see a Gallagher or a Marsh or a larger broker move further outside of their immediate city into your city. And generally, when they arrive, they don't have that relationship. They just have a program. So our goal from the Saville side is to make sure that you look like a big broker.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to make one more note. I know we've hit a lot on that local relationship and the local politics, but we have had agents walk into City Hall and the city was not happy with the current coverage. They weren't happy with the current agent or even the pool. So, you know, it's not a requirement that you know the entire council, but it definitely helps. But I'm not saying it's a requirement. Let's see what we got here. If we have the local contacts, who first to approach? School board member, CFO of district, similar to city, is it best to contact council or city manager first? Bob, you want to take this or?
Well, I would contact the person you know first.
Yep.
And if I personally like to start from the top and work my way down. So if I have a relationship with the city council or the mayor or the chairman, I'll usually talk to one of those and then get his reference back to the right person to discuss it with. The city manager or the county manager, work, you know, the CFO reports to them. But ultimately, you'll be working with the CFO if they're large enough. If they're not large enough, you'll be working with the city manager.
And there's typically somebody at the city, school, or county, or the insured that handles the insurance. That's their role, their job, and that's ultimately who you're going to meet with. But having those relationships in the local context, like you mentioned, is key. So we got anything else? Okay, well, I think that's it. Again, here's our contact info. Please reach out to us. We'd love to talk with you and help you any way we can. We don't have to write the account to help you. We've done that for hundreds of agents as well. Just advise them, and you know, we've stopped a lot of agents from quoting accounts because we've seen it before, and we know that the chances of them writing it are slim to none. We might even know the loss ratio and say nobody's going to write this. So you're very welcome, Amelia. Bob, you got anything else?
No. I'll emphasize what you just said, that I spend a lot of time advising agents, and at the end of the day, my advice is to stay where they are and to leave it with one of their own carriers. So we think that's they say that sometimes I try to talk you out of working with us, and if I can't talk you out of it, then we think it might be a good fit.
And I want to make one more note. So when you approach these cities, the most of the time I get a response, or the city gives my agent a response of, well, we'll bid it out in 2 years, or we don't have time to do an RFP. And so I tell agents, you know, that conversation needs to go, hey, I'm a local agent. I'd just like to present a few options to the council. We don't have to go through the bid process. We don't, you know, you can still go get your renewal quote, but we would like to just give a couple options, show what's in the marketplace, see if there's any possible savings or gaps in coverage. And that kind of takes the workload off the city. And then you come to us, we go out and get those quotes, prep everything. We make it very easy for you to present to the council. And we just don't want them to see you as more work at the city.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's all we got. Any other questions? Shoot us an email, give us a call. Like I said, we have a rule at our company. We answer our phones 7 days a week, almost 24 hours a day. So definitely give us a call on our cell phones. Take a look at our website. We've got multiple videos out. We've got several articles on our website about this stuff. And we're looking forward to hearing from you.